Hi guys, it's Reagan and welcome back to another video. Today's video is another unboxing book haul. It is officially, in my mind anyway, the fall season. It means a few things. One, it's truly just my favorite time to read, get cozy, just perfectly matches up with all of my favorite things in my personality, but also there are just so many fantastic book releases that come out this time of year, and there's also just so many books I've been wanting to pick up that have already been out for many years. So all set to say, I have bought books and I'm looking forward to showing them off. The first set of books I'm showing off are actually from Book of the Month, who I am partnering up with for this video. I have been a longtime Book of the Month partner. I read pretty much a book of the month or two every single month. I love their selections. I love their prices. They truly have such an array of authors and voices in the bookish community. So no matter what you like to read, they always have something for you every single month. But if you're not familiar, Book of the Month is an online bookish subscription service. Every single month, they curate a selection of 5 to 7 titles that you're able to select. This month, there are 5 main titles across a variety of different genres. They're always hardcover, they're always new releases, and they're sent directly to your door. I, of course, have a coupon code. If you guys want to sign up for Book of the Month using the code Peruse Project, you're able to get your first box for only $9.99. An absolute steal if you ask me. Of course, if you're not interested in any of the titles in any given month, it's super easy to skip. Such a great service, not only for the great prices and the books you're able to receive, but also kind of makes you feel like you're in this super large book club, which I also just love the community aspect of that as well. But I do have 2 books that I personally selected based off of their titles, the ones I am most excited for. So let's go ahead and open it up. I personally always feel like I'm a greedy book shopper. Like anytime someone gives me a selection of books, I basically always want them all. Just because I'm such a mood reader, I just never know what I'm going to like. But I try to keep my selection down to only 2 books for Book of the Month, the 2 that really called out to me the most. I'm so weak. The first book I selected from Book of the Month this month is The Fortunes of Jaded Women by Carolyn Huynh. This book just seemed like the perfect combination of a family tale full of heart, a story with a lot of humor, but also a lot of emotional narratives as well. The tagline of this story is, everyone in Orange County's Little Saigon knows that the Duong sisters are cursed. This family curse started many generations ago with one of their ancestors, Ona, after she decided to leave her current husband in hopes of finding true love. But a Vietnamese witch cursed her and the rest of her family with basically never finding happiness in love again, and also only giving birth to daughters, no sons. Ona's current descendant and our main character is May, and she knows this curse well. She is divorced, and after an explosive argument a few years ago, she's also estranged from her 2 sisters, both older and younger than her. She does have 3 daughters though, and she's really proud of them, and they also seem to be doing really well in life, despite in the love category, which might lead May to an early grave. Desperate for answers about her children's future, May visits a psychic and she is told a rather strange thing, and that is the family is going to experience a wedding, a funeral, and the birth of a son all this year. Prophecy also has plans to reunite mothers, daughters, cousins, aunts, for better or for worse. This is said to be a multi-narrative novel brimming with levity and candor. Fortunes of Jaded Women is about mourning, meddling, celebrating, and healing together as a family. It shows how Vietnamese women emerge victorious even if the world is against them. I love a family tale and saga. This seems like it's going to be really funny as well, full of drama, but again, just so much heart. I'm really intrigued by the setup of this. It's also not very long, which I always love to have kind of shorter novels on hand, just in case I want to do a 24-hour readathon. I really feel like I'm going to love this book, so I'm so excited to add it to my collection. And then the last book I selected from the titles this month from Book of the Month is Killers of a Certain Age by Deanna Raybourn. I love everything about this book, from the concept to the cover to the title. It just screams like a fantastic time. And the leading line of the synopsis of this book is, older women often feel invisible, but in this case, it might just be their secret weapon. This is a story that follows Billy, Mary Alice, Helen, and Natalie. They are assassins or spies, and they have been working for a very elite agency of spies for the past 40 years called the Museum. They've had a very successful, long career, career, but the agency is really pressuring them to retire, especially since they've kind of begun to prioritize more technology-leading approaches versus kind of more old school people-first approaches. At the beginning of the story, these 4 women are kind of going on a retiree trip funded by the company itself, but once they arrive, they quickly realize something is not quite right, and they actually think someone has taken a hit out on them. Also know that the only one with authority to take out field agents are actually the board of the museum itself. So now these women are not only fighting for their survival, but they're trying to like uncover this plot and also possibly turn against the organization they themselves have worked for the past 40 years. Doesn't this just sound like an absolute blast? A thriller, espionage-centered story, but also following like a close network of friends. In my head, I want this to be like Charlie's Angels meets the Golden Girls, and I just could not be more excited to pick this book up. I also kind of just want them to make this into a television show or a movie immediately. I'm thrilled to have this. It sounds like so much fun, and I'm really hoping it's a new thriller fave. Alrighty guys, those are the 2 books I picked up from Book of the Month this month. Again, I will have the link to their site if you want to check out the rest of the titles available for the month, as well as my discount code down below. But let's go ahead and dive into the rest of the titles I've picked up. The next few books I've picked up from some local bookstores during my travels over the past few weeks. The first 2 I grabbed while I was in California in Tahoe, and I'm so pumped about both of them. The first book is The Stationery Shop by Marjan Kamali. I have heard literally nothing but fantastic things about this book. I also hear it's incredibly romantic, but also heartbreaking. It just seems that everyone cries their way through this story, and honestly, sometimes I'm kind of just looking for a book that's going to melt my heart, and I really feel like this could be the perfect one to pick up. Reading over the synopsis, honestly, like my heart hurts. Literally read the synopsis in a bookstore and was like, get a hold of yourself, Reagan. You cannot cry in public just looking at a book cover. Like, that's too far. Get it together. But I strongly feel like this could possibly be a new fave, or at least a story that's going to stay with me for a very long time. It seems to be a story about fated love, connection that persists through time, and no matter how many obstacles that are put into place, we follow 2 main characters. First is Roya, who is a dreamy and idealistic young woman, and she lives in Tehran, and one of her favorite places to visit in the city is this particular stationery shop. She loves it there. It feels like an oasis. From the books and the selections to even the owner, everything about it is perfect. The owner of the bookshop is a very friendly individual and close to Roya, of course, and also loves to play a bit of matchmaker. So he decides to introduce Roya to one of his other favorite customers, Bafman, and these 2 individuals quickly connect, fall in love, and everything seems to be moving in the perfect direction. But on a fateful day nearing their wedding day, political chaos erupts, and these 2 individuals are separated and unable to connect or communicate in any way. Roya actually leaves and moves to the United States to go to university, and also just begins to settle down into a new life. But many, many years later, these 2 people cross paths once again, and that is the tale of this story. I mean, again, the synopsis, don't you just kind of want to cry? This is a story of love. I hear it's a sensitive and moving tale, and I just feel like it's going to destroy my soul. And honestly, I can't wait. Like, I think I'm gonna love this book. I don't know if I'm like emotionally prepared for this book, but I'm gonna dive in anyway. You know what I mean? The next book I grabbed just kind of caught my eye. It was a staff recommendation, and I kind of love a weird fantasy book. So I just couldn't help myself, and that is 16 Ways to Defend a Walled City by KJ Parker. This is the first book to a fantasy trilogy, and all the books kind of have these sort of like straightforward military-esque titles. And even reading over the synopsis, it appears that this book is documenting like a singular military conquest of one land trying to besiege another city, and it feels hopeless. The city has very little time to prepare. They don't have enough supplies. They don't have enough military power to really usurp or protect themselves from this outside force. But we also follow our main character, Orhan, who kind of is seemingly the only ray of hope in this particular situation, and he himself is not really a military man. He's actually the colonel of engineers. He has more experience with building bridges than battles. He has trouble with listening to authority. He's also a bit of a liar and a cheat. Not necessarily the most winning combination when you think of wanting someone on your side to help you win a very impossible like military situation, but it seems that Orhan might actually be the perfect person to try to save the city. And how this book seems to be written is more like documenting what occurred in this one particular moment. I feel like this kind of is supposed to give the feeling of like history, but it's fantasy. And I'm really fascinated to see how that's all going to unfold. And again, this is also the first book in a trilogy, so I'm curious to see how like later installments are gonna play out and structurally how the entire series is gonna come together. But needless to say, I'm very intrigued and I'm hopeful that I'm going to love it. The next book shouldn't be any surprise at all, and that is Babel by R.F. Kuang. This is by far and away my most anticipated release of the year. I love R.F. Kuang's writing. Poppy War series was just one of my favorite book series of all time. Love how R.F. Kuang combines like actual historic commentary with fantasy, just crafting one of the most unique literary experiences. And she is back with a new book and a new series, and this one is kind of taking aim at not only England, but the history of colonialism and academia itself, and I could not be more excited to read this book. I've actually started it. I'm about 100 pages in at the point of filming this video, and I can say I am loving it so far. But if you're not familiar, this book opens in 1828, and we follow our main character Robin, who is an orphan. At the beginning of this story, he's basically taken from his homeland of China after his mother passes to England, and he's quickly put in like a very intensive training process in language. He doesn't really know why, but he spends his days learning Greek and Latin and continuing his education on Mandarin and English, all in preparation for him to enroll in a very prestigious, like, translating group at the University of Oxford. And when he finally does, he's quickly confronted with the fact that this is not just like a institution of learning, instead might be the British Empire's most powerful tool in maintaining and expanding their power and influence around the world. And Robin is obviously very torn, and he might in fact fall into revolution, student revolution, and I can't wait. The first 130 pages have been fantastic. There's footnotes, there's just so much to unpack, and what R.F. Kuang is like including, commenting on, not just on like the university aspect, but the actual like time and place of the economic and political policy that's in place in this point in time is just fascinating. And all of that also has like a bit of a fantasy twist to it. Not alternate history by any means, but just a little bit of fantasy included as well. It's so good so far. I can't wait to finish it. I'm obsessed. Obviously, I bought this book because duh. The next package is some fall-inspired purchases. I feel like there are some new releases and also just books that have been out for the past couple of years that I just feel like are perfect for this upcoming fall season. I'm a big seasonal reader. Ooh. And I don't know, both of these books just really called out to me. So the first one honestly just sounds like a blast, and for some reason I also feel like it might be being adapted into a television or a movie. I'm not totally sure on that one, but I hope it's true. And the book I'm talking about is The Southern Book Club's Guide to Slaying Vampires by Grady Hendrix. The title, the cover, the vibe, the concept of this is everything I could possibly want. I'm obsessed with like the aesthetic of this. I love the peach with the vampire bite. It's so dang cute. But this follows our main character Patricia, and she would say her life is pretty small. She has a workaholic husband who does not make a lot of time for her. Her kids are growing up, and she just spends a lot of time alone at home, and she is lonely. The only solace that she really finds is in her close-knit book club of other women in the Charleston area and their deep love for thrillers. Then a man named James Harris walks into her life and flips it upside down, making her feel things that she has never felt before. But as young children begin to disappear on the other side of town, she begins to get suspicious of James, and her book club, I think, begin to investigate. Is he more of a Brad Pitt character? Is he a Bundy character? Or something much, much worse? I think this sounds like a blast, and I also feel like it could veer into being actually rather dark if it wanted to be. I personally really enjoy the trope of like an unlikely group of individuals going out to investigate something, relying on their own like skill set and reference points to do so. You see this in a lot of media, and I always think it's a lot of fun, and I feel like this could really be a blast as well. I want it to be like clever and funny, but also maybe even a little bit spooky. I feel like this could be a perfect pickup for the fall season. I mean, there is literally vampires in the title, so I'm really hoping vampires do exist in this novel, but there's only one way to find out. And then the next book I picked up is a new release, but I also just feel like based on the synopsis and the atmosphere makes it a perfect fall read, and that is The Book Eaters by Sun Yi Dean. This has a very strange synopsis, but I love a weird fantasy story pretty much more than anything out there. But this follows a very strange and secret society of people who eat books, and they actually get sustenance from eating these books. For them, a spy novel has a very specific peppery taste. A romantic novel has a sweetness to it. They can eat a map and actually retain and remember the different locations that were on it. And when they're in trouble, they often have to eat dreary pages out of a dictionary. In this story, we follow our main character Devon, and she is part of a very old and very reclusive book eater family. In this family, the boys are raised to eat stories of valor and adventure, whereas the girls are raised to eat cautionary tales and fairy tales. But not all stories have happy endings, and Devon is really having to confront this as her own son showing signs of hungering for something entirely different than stories: the human mind. This book says truth is found between the stories we're fed and the stories we hunger for. It just sounds so unique and, again, very, very strange. I love books that center stories. I think it's just sort of a meta experience that I always personally really enjoy. I'm excited to check out a new author as well. V.E. Schwab said she devoured this, which is also great wordplay if you ask me. I'm really hoping I love it. I'm just hoping it's a very like imaginative and unique story, and I have a sneaking suspicion it's going to be exactly that. So I decided to add this to my shelf as well. Next is a package that I don't actually technically know what this is. Like, I recall buying a book, but I wasn't expecting it to arrive for like a month, but maybe I'm lucky. Only one way to find out. Oh my god, it is the book. Okay, this is so exciting. The book I am so excited about is my copy of I'm Glad My Mom Died by Jeanette McCurdy. I was not expecting to get this book for another few weeks. I've actually already read this book. I listened to the audiobook via Scribd and absolutely loved it. It is a very raw and emotional memoir written by our author Jeanette as she recounts her childhood, a lot of the trauma she experienced not only in her own household, the experiences of being a child actor and working on the iCarly set. It is incredibly honest. It is very emotional. I would also say it's full of so many different trigger warnings, so please, please, please look those up before you consider picking this book up. I wanted a physical copy to add to my shelf because it is a book I personally just found to be astounding. I'm also obsessed with like the stylization of this. I mean, everything about it, from the color palette to the fonts to the picture, it's just such a well-constructed novel, and I just have to have respect for it, and that's also why I wanted to add it to my shelf. Like, even the dust jacket just has like this retro feel to it as well. But again, this is just one of the most deeply personal stories, and it's also like darkly funny as well. I just feel like Jeanette's voice just really shone through her memoir, and I'm really excited to see what she does next. It was excellent, and I'm just really happy to have this earlier than I was expecting and have the opportunity to add it to my shelf. So yeah, I bought this. And it surprised me by coming early. Next is a piece of PR, which is kind of looking at the package. You might be able to guess what it is, and I could not be more excited about this. I'm usually not a big ARC reader, but this is, I think, an ARC of one of my favorite YA fantasy series out there, and it is. Okay, I'm so excited. So in this package, I actually have two books to show off. First is the paperback copy of Legendborn by Tracy Deonn. This is book one to the Legendborn series by this author, and it's so good. This is a series that basically pulls from Arthurian legends, but also combines that with Southern Black culture, creating one of the most unique, riveting, explosive YA fantasy series I have read in years. I have been dying for the second book to come out. But if you're not familiar, this story follows our main character Bree, and Bree is grieving. After the tragic and very sudden passing of her mother, Bree is kind of looking to escape her household to not only run away from her feelings, but not have to be around her father's feelings as well. She decides to enroll in a very prestigious high school program on the UNC campus, basically allowing high school kids to take college level coursework. And she's looking forward to kind of having a fresh start. But on Bree's first night there, she actually witnesses a magical attack and discovers that a secret society exists on campus to basically fight off and control the magic that exists here. From there, Bree begins to question if her mother's passing actually might have more to it, so she decides that she is going to try to become a part of this secret society and enters trials to become one of their ranks. It's truly everything you could want in YA fantasy, an amazing main character, an explosive plot that is trial-centric, so much secret history, there's so much self-discovery and family history and family magic. It is amazing, and the ending absolutely explosive, which is why I'm so thrilled to have the sequel in my hands. I have been waiting 2 years for this. This does come out in November, so if you haven't read the first one, Legendborn, it is the perfect time to pick it up ahead of the sequel coming out. I can't wait to see where the plot's going to go next. I have full faith in Tracy Deonn, and I also just simply could not even begin to guess because she blew my mind at the end of book one. It's such a cool like YA urban fantasy mixed with dark academia. It is just everything to me, and I'm so excited to have this. And then the last book I picked up is actually also from Book of the Month. I decided to pick up myself one of their July titles that just really caught my eye and I wanted to add to my bookshelf, and that is Bronze Drum by Phuong Nguyen. This is actually a retelling of a very famous historical pair of sisters in Vietnamese history, and those are the Trung sisters. They are very alike but also very different in many ways. They spend their days obviously training and studying in many different areas. One sister is more serious and more disciplined, while the other is more free-spirited and would much rather spend her time going after her romantic pursuits. But at the beginning of the story, everything is kind of turned upside down, and the sisters' lives, as well as the lives of their people, are in the shadow under the oppressive rule of the Han Chinese. And at the beginning of the story, our main character's father is actually killed, so now the sisters kind of have no men in their lives to protect them, and they instead must rely on themselves. This is the story of these two sisters not only beginning to fight back, but I think they raise their own army of Vietnamese women and like go after the Han Chinese. This is a story that has apparently existed and passed down through many generations over thousands of years, and I'm so excited to be able to read and experience it myself. It sounds incredible, and it just makes me want to learn so much more, not only about these sisters, but this place and time. And I'm thrilled to have at least this novel by this author on my shelf. But I love like any type of fantasy or historical fantasy story, and I feel like this is going to be incredible. Alrighty guys, those are all the books I picked up over the past month or so. I hope you enjoyed this video. Again, I'll have a link to my coupon code for Book of the Month as well as a link to their site. But I hope you enjoyed this video, and I will see you soon with another one soon. Goodbye!